Today was supposed to be ordinary. The last day of her military career, just a quiet drive home in a silver sedan. No ceremony, no speeches, no one even watching her leave. But miles down the road, something shifted. Engines appeared on both sides. Military trucks lined the highway. Hazard lights blazing in perfect sync. Civilians pulled over, standing in silence, hats pressed to their chests. The road had transformed into a corridor of steel and fire, and the woman who thought she would vanish unnoticed was about to discover this day would be remembered forever. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. The office smelled faintly of ink and dust. Fluorescent bulbs hummed overhead, washing everything in pale light. No cameras, no flags, just paper, pens, and the weight of a signature. Janelle Carver leaned over the desk, hands steady despite the scar that pulled at her shoulder. She signed her name one final time, the black ink bleeding slightly into the page. 32 years of service, ended by a single line. The clerk across from her barely looked up. He stamped the file, slid it into a stack already tall with other discharges. "Thank you for your service," he muttered, eyes already shifting to the next folder. Janelle closed the wooden box that sat at her elbow. Its brass latch clicked shut, dull from age. Inside lay a purple heart wrapped in cloth and papers too old to be crisp. She lifted the box carefully, as though it carried more than metal. In truth, it carried her life. She tucked it under her arm and walked toward the exit. No one followed. No handshakes or farewells. Just the echo of her boots across the tiled floor. Outside, the sun was sharp against the pavement. Cars rolled by without pause, indifferent to the soldier walking away from uniform. The gate loomed ahead, familiar and final. She had imagined this moment differently once. A ceremony, a line of comrades. But time had stripped the picture bare. Now she only wanted silence, to leave without a trace. She reached the sedan parked in the lot. The paint had dulled to a flat silver. It blended perfectly into traffic, the way she preferred. The box went onto the passenger seat. She slid behind the wheel, the leather seat creaking under her weight. The engine turned over with a low growl, steady and unremarkable. Her left shoulder ached as she adjusted the mirror. The metal inside her bones always spoke on damp mornings. Today, it simply reminded her that she was no longer built for battle. She eased toward the gate. The guard waved her through without hesitation. Another car, another driver, another departure. The highway opened wide, heat rising in shimmers off the asphalt. Pines stretched on both sides, dark green against the bright sky. For a moment, the road felt endless and quiet. Janelle let the car settle into a rhythm. 35 miles an hour, hands at 10 and 2. This was how she imagined it. No spectacle, no attention, just a woman, a car, and a road leading home. Her thoughts wandered to Teresa. Her sister would be waiting by the old gate, garden gloves tucked in her pocket. The smell of soil, not cordite, would fill her lungs tonight. The idea brought a faint relief, to be ordinary again. To vanish into a neighborhood where no one asked questions. But then she saw them. Lights, faint at first, flickering in the distance. Yellow strobes breaking the horizon in perfect timing. Her grip tightened on the wheel. Construction, maybe, or a wreck ahead. She slowed, eyes narrowing. The glow grew sharper, resolving into dozens of beams. They flashed in unison, unwavering, like a coded signal. As she drew closer, shapes emerged. Not cars, not construction rigs. Military vehicles, Humvees, ambulances, supply trucks lined across both shoulders. Engines idled, a deep mechanical chorus. Windows tinted dark, silhouettes just visible behind the glass. Every hazard light pulsed together, turning the road into a living heartbeat. A sheriff's cruiser blocked the outer lane. The officer stepped out, hand raised, palm flat. not to stop her, only to direct her forward. Janelle's jaw clenched. Her foot hovered on the brake. The officer pointed firmly to the center lane, where no traffic moved. The formation shifted as if on cue. Vehicles angled outward, parting into two rigid lines. A corridor of steel and silence opened before her sedan. For a moment, she thought of turning off, taking the side road, disappearing before anyone could notice. But the path ahead was unmistakable. The sheriff's gaze held hers, steady and unwavering. The soldiers in the nearest Humvee nodded once, slow and deliberate. No words, no smiles, just acknowledgement. Janelle swallowed hard. Her heart knocked once, twice, then steadied itself. She flicked the blinker, eased into the center lane, and rolled forward. The sedan slipped between the walls of vehicles. Sunlight glared against their armored surfaces, reflecting in shards across her windshield. Each flash lit the wooden box on her passenger seat like a spotlight. Civilians had gathered at the roadside, pulled from their cars. Some held hats in their hands. Others simply stood, heads bowed, watching the corridor form around her. Janelle's throat tightened. Her plan for invisibility was gone, stripped bare by this unexpected ritual. Every mile forward felt heavier than the last. She pressed her palms tighter against the wheel. Her lips formed silent words. Not today. Not me. But the convoy answered in action. Not speech. Engines rumbled. Hazards strobed. The corridor held. And as she drove deeper into it, one thought struck like a bell inside her skull. This was supposed to be ordinary. Today was supposed to be mine alone. But the road had chosen differently. The road had become a witness, and she was no longer invisible. Janelle exhaled, long and steady. The bridge ahead shimmered in the sun. Her chest rose and fell, her pulse refusing to slow. Her hands stayed locked at 10 and 2. Her eyes stayed on the horizon. But inside, her world tilted into something unplanned, something irreversible. And as the convoy stretched before her, mile after mile, she whispered under her breath, this was supposed to be a normal day. Yet already, she knew it would not be. Engines held a steady growl as the convoy found its rhythm. 35 miles an hour, precise, unbroken. Her sedan was locked in the center, a single civilian car surrounded by armored steel. Janelle's eyes flicked from mirror to mirror, left the blunt nose of a Humvee keeping even pace. Right a field ambulance. Windows dark, shadowed figures inside. Every few seconds the light shifted, bouncing off their surfaces. It turned her windshield into shards of gold and steel. Each flash felt deliberate, like the convoy itself was speaking without words. Civilians had stopped on the shoulders. A farmer in dusty overalls stood by his truck, hat pulled against his chest. A woman in a sundress held her daughter's hand, both staring silently. No one waved. No one shouted. They simply watched the passage unfold, as if they already understood what she did not. Her pulse was too loud in her ears. She tried to keep her breathing steady, but each inhale caught short. Something about this display unsettled her more than it honored. She hadn't asked for it. She had wanted anonymity. Yet every mile seemed to strip that shield away. Her fingers tapped the wheel. She thought of pulling off at the next exit, ending this strange parade. But the wall of vehicles offered no opening. It was not confinement by force. It was confinement by design, by respect. The soldiers weren't trapping her. They were carrying her forward. She looked right, at the ambulance's side mirror. For a brief moment she caught a face, young and stern. His eyes met hers, then snapped back to the road. The expression was not casual. It was practiced, disciplined. A soldier on duty, not a man curious about a stranger. She turned forward again. The stretch of asphalt shimmered under the Georgia sun, but her mind drifted miles and years away. The smell came first: burnt metal, charred fabric, then the weight of dust pressing into her lungs. Afghanistan, Helmand province. She had been crouched in the dirt, shoulder already bleeding from shrapnel. A blast crater smoked only yards away. All around her, Chaos throbbed like a wound that would not close. A soldier screamed for morphine. Another clutched a leg half severed, eyes wild with shock. The ground was slick beneath her boots. Her kit spilled open across the sand. Markers, gauze, a combat log already stained red. She grabbed the black felt tip and forced herself to write. Name, time, status. Her handwriting blurred as sweat rolled down her forehead. Still, she pressed the marker hard enough to tear cloth. Every second, another mark. Tourniquet applied, 2241. Airway stable monitor. Evac requested. She remembered the boy convulsing at her feet, barely more than 19. Foam traced the corners of his mouth. She seized his wrist, felt the faint flutter of pulse, then scrawled across his forearm, Keating, Rowan Tourniquet, 2241. She tightened the strap until his thrashing slowed. Mortar fire cracked in the distance. Someone shouted her name, but she didn't lift her head. Her focus stayed on the pen, the bandage, the soldier still breathing. Her own blood seeped through the back of her uniform. Pain clawed her shoulder and spine, but the work could not pause, one after another. She logged them, black ink against pale skin, a triage loop that became the only order in the madness. The memory crashed against her chest so hard she gasped aloud. The present snapped back the convoy, the highway, the steady thrum of engines. Her knuckles whitened around the wheel. She glanced sideways again. The ambulance beside her held its line, refusing to break pace. On its dashboard, sunlight flared against a small rectangle. Her eyes narrowed. Letters surfaced through the glare, clear and undeniable. A nameplate stamped bold Rowan Keating, the same name she had written in sand, blood, and ink. The same boy she had feared would never see another sunrise. Now etched on a plate inside a military ambulance rolling only feet away. Her throat tightened, breath stuttered in her chest. For a moment the wheel shook beneath her grip. She blinked hard, once, twice, as if her eyes had betrayed her. But when she looked again, the name was still there. No mistake. Her heart pounded faster. Disbelief tangled with relief, and fear laced through both. She whispered his name under her breath, barely audible. Rowan Keating. Alive, here. The convoy roared on, disciplined and relentless. The civilians on the roadside watched in reverent silence. But inside the sedan, the world tilted into something unsteady. Her disbelief sharpened into a new weight. What she had thought was coincidence now felt like design. Someone had arranged this. Her pulse refused to calm. Memories collided with the undeniable present. Her past had stepped onto the same road as her future. And as the bridge came into view ahead, the truth pressed harder. This was not an accident. It was recognition intentional, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Her suspicion had become certainty. Rowan Keating had lived, and he was riding beside her now. The bridge rose ahead, steel girders cutting the sky into narrow frames. Engines downshifted in perfect sync, the growl turning into a slow roll. Her sedan moved forward, the convoy guiding her without a word. At mid-span, one ambulance braked. Hazards blinked, the vehicle drifting aside to create space. Its door opened, and a soldier stepped down. He carried himself with deliberate control, boots striking the steel, each step measured. When he stopped, he removed his cap and held it tight against his thigh. Janelle's pulse hammered in her throat. She knew his name before she saw his face, but the reality still jolted her chest. Rowan Keating stood in the lane, eyes fixed on her, not as the convulsing boy she remembered on the desert floor, but as a man, upright, steady, alive. She slowed, pulling the sedan to a stop yards away. The convoy idled, an iron wall of patience behind her. Wind off the river rattled the bridge rails. Rowan lifted his chin, voice cutting clear. "Ma'am, today marks your discharge." He paused, letting the weight settle. But for us, it cannot pass in silence. Every word was precise. Not a speech, but a statement, a truth delivered straight. Janelle opened her door, metal creaking under her weight. She stepped onto the bridge, knees stiff, shoulder aching. The air felt heavier than any desert night. Rowan reached into his jacket. He drew out a clear sleeve, edges bent from years of use. Inside was a single page, smudged and faded. He held it out with both hands, as if it were sacred. Janelle hesitated before taking it. Her fingers brushed plastic, and memories surged like fire. The page carried rows of names and times, written in hurried scrawl. Bloodstains and dust marks still clung to its edges. At the bottom, in bold strokes, J. Carver, Arn. Hold the line. Her vision blurred. The letters were hers, drawn in desperation that night. She had signed it without believing it would survive. Rowan's voice was steady, but not without weight. We kept it. The system you built, M-loop triage. 7 minutes. Rotate. No one skipped. His gaze didn't waver. It saved me, and it still saves others. His hand tapped the sleeve once. Firm. New medics drill it. Your words guide them. Janelle's knees weakened, but she refused to fall. The bridge beneath her felt alive, vibrating with engines and memory. Her grip on the paper tightened until her knuckles whitened. Her lips parted, but only a rasp escaped. You carried this. All these years, the disbelief scraped her throat raw. Rowan nodded. No hesitation. Not just me. The whole company trains with it. They know your name. His shoulders straightened with quiet pride. He returned his cap to his head, then offered a sharp salute. The gesture was crisp, final. Around him, soldiers in nearby vehicles sat higher, eyes locked on her. No applause and no cheers, only discipline, drawn tight like a bowstring. Janelle felt something shift inside her chest. Not relief, not sorrow, recognition. The ghost that had haunted her steps did not vanish. But for once, one of them stood breathing before her, proof that her service had not disappeared into silence. Rowan turned, climbed back into the ambulance. The door slammed with a hollow thud. Engines roared as the convoy prepared to move again. One by one, vehicles peeled off, formation dissolved, leaving space on the road ahead. The honor lane disassembled as efficiently as it had formed. Janelle returned to her car, sleeve pressed against her chest. Her hands shook as she set it carefully on the passenger seat. For a moment she only sat, unable to turn the key. The bridge stretched open before her. The convoy thinned, each engine fading into distance, until only her sedan remained in the center lane. She inhaled once, steadying herself. The day she thought would be silent had roared instead, and the proof lay inches from her hand. She turned the key, engine humming alive again. The wheels gripped the bridge deck, pulling her forward. This was no longer just the drive home. It was a passage, a reminder, a truth she could no longer deny. Her voice, quiet but firm, slipped into the air. Not a normal day. The road answered in silence, carrying her on. Teresa Boone waited at the gate, garden gloves tucked in her pocket. She had seen the convoy from blocks away, lights blazing, engines heavy. By the time her sister's sedan turned into the drive, the street was already empty again. She stepped forward, her face caught between confusion and awe. Janelle, what was all that she whispered? Her sister only shook her head, eyes still locked on the road behind her. The two embraced, not long, not dramatic, just the kind of embrace that said everything silence could not. When they stepped back, Teresa studied her sister's face older, lined, but brighter than she'd seen in years. Inside, the house smelled of fresh soil and brewed coffee. Janelle carried the wooden box to the table, setting it down gently. The latch clicked open, releasing the weight of her years. She lifted the purple heart, its edge cool against her fingers. Instead of placing it in the center, she slid it to the side. Then, from her jacket, she drew the sleeve Rowan had handed her. The page looked fragile under the lamp. The ink faded, but legible. She pressed it flat beside the metal, giving it the central place of honor. In her eyes, one paper outweighed any decoration of bronze. Her phone buzzed against the table, the screen lighting the quiet room. The message was short, ma'am. If someone ever needs to learn M-loop, let me know. It bore no signature, but she didn't need one. Her thumb hovered for a moment. She thought of young medics she would never meet, faces she could still save indirectly. Then she typed her reply, "Don't wait for someday, begin Monday." The message sent. She set the phone down. Teresa returned with 2 mugs of coffee, sliding one across the table. No words passed between them, none were needed. Janelle leaned back, shoulders easing into the chair. Her gaze drifted to the shelf where the paper now lay. It seemed to glow under the lamplight, more enduring than metal ever could. Outside, dusk settled over the neighborhood. Children's laughter floated faintly from the next block. Life went on, ordinary and unshaken. But Janelle knew the truth today had not been an ending. It had been a passage, a transfer of duty from her hands to others. Her service would live on, not in ceremony, but in practice. She rose, crossing to the window. The street outside was empty, only a lamppost humming as it flickered on. For a heartbeat, its glow stretched across the asphalt like the corridor she had driven. Her lips parted, and she spoke softly into the quiet. Not the last day, the first of something else. The words vanished into the night, but the weight of them remained. The camera would drift back, leaving her silhouette framed in the window, a soldier no longer in uniform, yet still holding the line. The final image, a quiet street, one house lit, and the knowledge that her work continued.